Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 81 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Man, I'm good, man. I'm doing well.
All right, you must be, because you said man twice in that first sentence.
That was me saying hello, and then that was Rex saying hello.
Oh, okay. So one man from you.
One from Rex.
One from Rex.
Yeah.
So I was listening to the theme music in my headphones.
Yeah.
Haven't talked about it in a while. You know, it kind of gets me jazzed up. I think the only thing that it's missing is a little Ron Burgundy Yaz flute.
Oh, yeah.
If you had just a little hint of that, if we could somehow incorporate that, I think we'd be golden.
We would be golden. How could I do that?
I don't know. You know absolutely nothing about electronics, so...
But I can play the recorder.
Which is very close to jazz flute.
Yeah, it really is. It's just instead of off to the side, it's out to the front, you know?
You could play the recorder when you were probably like 8.
Yeah, I don't know if I could really play it more than just like I would sing the song through it to make it sound like I was playing it.
I think that's a kazoo.
No, the recorder, man. The plastic thing that you...
I know what a recorder is. I have kids.
I don't think you do.
That are not that far removed from playing recorder.
Oh, do they still have theirs?
They probably do.
We bring it down here, man, and I'll just whip off a tune, man. Jazzy.
All right, Gibbs. We got some Patreon supporters.
Do we?
We got to give shout outs.
I always like when we have Patreon supporters. That's good.
We had Christopher Jackson jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Christopher.
Jordan D. Stefano.
Hey, Di Stefano.
Mary E. James.
Thank you, Mary.
Sarah Jones jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Sarah.
Lori Lanzacero.
Lanzacero?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like the way you say it better.
Yeah.
Tracy Tilley.
Hey, Tracy.
And that's not something I say a lot, so you should...
I know. I relish the moment.
You should relish that.
I am. With my relish on my hot dog.
Jen Lawrence.
Hey, Jim. Wait a minute. You said Jen, not Jim, right?
Yeah, Jen.
Jen, like Jennifer Lawrence. Like we said, we thought it was the famous person the first time. Mm-hmm. Found out it wasn't.
It wasn't.
Which was good.
This is probably the same person back with us.
Or it's the real Jennifer Lawrence.
I'm going to get another email from her that says, hey, it's not that Jen Lawrence.
I just came back around.
It's a better Jen Lawrence. That's what she said last time.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I believed her.
Yeah.
Because she's a Patreon supporter.
She's Patreon.
We had Joe's DeRoe.
Joe's DeRoe.
That's what I'm going with. Mary Bells. Patty James.
Patty James.
With 2 D's.
Sounds like a singer.
Patty James. It kind of does.
James.
Like an old school.
Like got some pipes on her.
Yep. Ivy Wynn.
Ivy Winning?
Maybe.
Are
you? I don't know.
I don't know. Ask Ivy.
Becky Markle.
Hey.
That might be Gibbs one of the weakest A's you've ever given.
I know. It's like, hey. Yeah. We do appreciate you.
Was it a hey or an A?
I think it meant to be a hey, but it just
came out like...
Yeah, I don't know why it did.
Nothing against Becky.
No, not at all.
It was just a weak...
How you doing?
It's just a weak hey.
Yeah.
Amelie Lanier.
Amelie.
Susan Jenkins.
Hey, Susan.
Fallon Hoffman.
Well, that's a good name, man.
That is
Fallon.
a cool name.
Yeah.
Amanda Tedrick.
Hey, Amanda.
Donna Joplin jumped out to her highest level.
Thank you, Donna.
Travis Hetwer.
Hey, Travis.
Paige Compston. Darcy Atkinson jumped out at our highest level.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cecily Alvested. Yeah, last time I said Stad, so this time I'm saying Stad.
Stad. Yeah.
Stad.
Yeah.
Shelby Waters jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Shelby.
Tegan Belitsky.
I like the Tegan. I
don't think that came out right.
I like the name Tegan.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I like the name Tegan a lot. Christine Vang.
Hey, Christine Vang.
Jacqueline Gebel.
You didn't make fun of me saying her name wrong. I just realized I said it wrong.
let it go.
Yeah, okay.
I let it go.
She won't.
Jacqueline jumped out at her highest level.
Thank you.
Bridget Helgoth.
Hey, Bridget.
Jessica Foster.
Thank you.
And Michael Guarini also jumped out at her highest level.
Thanks, Michael.
Then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Wendy Sanders.
Thanks, Wendy.
So huge shout out to her for her continued longtime support.
And I think it's great, I mean...
It's amazing.
Yeah, and she's, she knows some stuff. She used to, she grew up with the Colonel, so she's got some secrets, recipes.
She knows some stuff.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
She knows some stuff,
She knows some stuff.
She knows how to whip up that chicken, man. She's part of the Sanders family.
Oh.
Ask her, she'll tell you. Her and the Colonel.
If she is or was, she would be a very, very rich woman.
Well, might just be.
And maybe she is. I don't know. But, big shout out to all of our new supporters, all the people that continue to support us month after month. We had some great PayPal support as well, Gibbs. We had Kate Balsifer.
Did you mean balls over?
It might be. I don't know.
The way it's spelled, I think it's balls over.
But I was going with Balsifer. Well Stacked Books, Deborah Pfeiffer, and Jennifer Murray.
Thanks, Pfeiffer and Murray.
So love that PayPal support.
I'm going to check out the book place, man. That's got me interested. Well Stacked Books.
It's a really cool name for a bookstore, if that's what it is.
Yeah.
Which I'm assuming it is. All right, Gibbs, we just got done taping the TCAT episode that is out right now.
We did.
Part 2, finishing up the Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka saga. I like to use the word saga.
Saga.
When I'm talking
That's
about
a good one.
More than one part.
And you also liked the band Saga back in the day.
Was there a band named Saga?
You got the freaking poster.
I never even
I've
heard
seen
of
the concert
Saga.
shirt that you wear now and then.
You're just making stuff up.
You know you liked them.
It's a very good episode. It's rough.
It's rough.
The details are brutal.
Yeah.
Because their crimes were brutal.
Made me a little nauseated.
A little bit.
Yeah.
But you have a weak stomach.
I can sometimes, when it comes to stuff like that.
For a true crime podcaster, you're a little weak in the stomach sometimes.
Well, I did have a double hernia.
And you're just a very sensitive guy.
Yeah, I had a double hernia.
Yeah, I know. You've been milking it for about 3 months now. We know.
Yeah. Time to let it go?
Time to let it go. Be a man. Get over this double hernia.
I stitched myself up myself.
Pull your Wranglers up and get to work.
Well, you like for me to pull my Wranglers up. You say all my jeans are hanging down too low.
Mr. Saggy.
Mr. Saggy Pants.
So we want to let everybody know that there will be no episode next week on Unsolved. We're taking a break next week. We are putting out a Patreon episode on Karla Faye Tucker. All right, Gibbs, you ready to get into this episode of Unsolved?
Let's do it.
We are talking about the Cleveland torso murderer, and this is one that's been highly requested.
Yeah, it's been one I've been wanting to do for a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's been really high on your list.
Yeah.
And, of course, we're in the great state of Ohio, which,
home of the...
which seems to have bred an abnormal proportion of killers. I don't know how else to say it. We just seem to live in a state that, for its population, has a pretty large number of killers, serial killers.
It's either the Winters or the Winters, or it's all the pork that we have around here.
Now you're blaming it on the salt, or what are you blaming?
I don't know. All the bacon.
I eat a lot of bacon.
Yeah, I love bacon too.
Doesn't mean I want to hurt anyone.
Do we know that for sure? Do we really?
Take my word for it.
Do we?
Now, the body count in this case would officially be 13, but many feel that it was probably over 20. The majority of the murders occurred between the years of 1935 and 1938. I think we have to talk about the reason why people feel that the total could be higher than 20, and it's the fact that it could extend to other areas, Youngstown, and then even areas outside of Ohio like Pittsburgh. There are cases that many people believe are linked to the Cleveland torso murderer, and if they are indeed, it would expand that time frame greatly from 1920 to 1950, as much as 30 years. Included in this expanded list is the unknown victim named the Lady of the Lake. This is a woman that was found on September 5th, 1934. And Robert Robertson, found on July 22nd, 1950. Both of these victims found in Cleveland. Now, most of the known victims were drifters, people passing through town. But one thing that it seemed that they all had in common was that they were part of the lower class. And maybe this was a strategy on the part of the murderer, thinking that these are people that likely would not be missed.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were killing for the thrill of it, if it didn't matter, then why wouldn't you go for somebody that just was, come Monday, wasn't going to be missed by anybody? You know?
So, yeah, if you're picking random people, that's what you're suggesting, right? A random killer.
Yeah.
Why not pick somebody that maybe is not going to be missed? It's going to be harder to maybe link you to the crime.
And maybe the authorities won't be so
eager to solve it.
Yeah. Because they're not going to have any exterior pressure put on them.
I think you're making a good point there. And we have to think about, I mean, this is the Depression era. People were concerned about a lot of things, but the one thing that maybe they weren't as concerned about as they were in other time periods is people that they hadn't seen in a while. People were moving around, migrant, trying to find work or trying to find a place where they could feed their family.
Or if it was a hobo or something, you know? Nobody's missing a hobo.
Sure.
You know?
And that was a common ground of this killer, you know, shanty towns, and one in particular, an area of Cleveland called the Flats. Now, today, the Flats is where you go if you want to hang out and drink.
Yeah, it's a good time.
Sure.
It's a party town.
When I go to Cleveland to meet some of my buddies from college, that's where we go. We go to the Flats and go drink.
Turn it up.
Turn it up.
Yeah. Turn it up.
It seems like a strange phrase coming from you, but okay.
I got my boots on, though.
Well, you're all turned up.
Turned up.
This murderer would behead victims, then dismember them, and in many cases would cut the torso completely in half, which is where, Gibbs, you get the nickname the torso murderer.
Right.
And I think this is different than the dismemberment that we talk about in a lot of our cases, especially on True Crime All the Time. We're talking about, in many cases, what would be a post-mortem dismemberment.
Yeah.
That's not the case here.
No.
The decapitation or the dismemberment that occurred in these cases, it's what caused the death of the victim.
It did. It really did, you know. So you're alive when this is happening.
Which dismemberment is rough enough, even when you think about it post-mortem. You think about decapitating or cutting someone in half while they're still alive.
Yeah.
That is brutal.
That is brutal, man.
And on top of that, the men were always castrated.
Yeah. How would you like to be awake for that?
Which makes me wince
It should.
saying the words.
Yeah.
And a few of the victims showed some form of a chemical that had been applied to their bodies.
Yeah, I don't know if it was something that was used to maybe knock the victim out or, you know, make them numb to fighting, you know what I mean?
Or numb to have their manhood cut off or their torso cut in half.
Maybe it was something that they could feel, but they couldn't move. That would be bad, man. If it numbed you to the point or, you know, kept you, you know what I'm saying?
Now you got me thinking about one of my favorite movies, Law Abiding Citizen. You know, in that movie, Gibbs, he gives that person, one of the victims, some type of injection where he's fully awake. He's seeing everything that's happening as he's essentially sawing him. So he can feel it, but he can't move somehow.
Yeah, and he stops the bleeding so he can keep torturing him for many days.
Yeah, that's a good movie. I like that.
It is a good movie.
The problem for police in this case was identifying the bodies. You know, for one thing, most of the victims were found many months, if not years, after they had been killed. And of course, in the situations where the victim was beheaded, you know, having no head makes it very hard to identify someone. So let's talk about one of the most famous investigators in this case. And it's a man that most people are going to recognize, Eliot Ness. And most people know Eliot Ness from The Untouchables, you know, the guy that brought down Al Capone for tax evasion. But at this point in time, Eliot Ness was the public safety director of Cleveland. And it was a position that had authority over the police department and other services like the fire department.
Almost like a city manager, or,
Sounds like it.
Mayor,
something like that.
Type of job back then.
So Ness didn't really do any investigation himself, but it's an interesting tidbit, a fact, that you had this famous law guy kind of overseeing the case. Now, at one point, he did assist in the arrest of a suspect by the name of Dr. Francis Sweeney, which we'll talk about later when we get into suspects. But Ness was also instrumental in the demolition and burning of Kingsbury Run. And Kingsbury Run is a prehistoric riverbed running from the flats.
Yeah, that's the same area that had train tracks. That's where you would see the B&O Railroad run through it, I would say 2-3 times a day. So you could pick up that, you had a lot of the hobos picking up that, the old Baltimore, Ohio train when they wanted to go on to the next city or come back to this city from somewhere else. So you had all that transient, hobo folks coming.
But back then, Gibbs, it was a dark, dreary, dangerous place. As you mentioned, it was a place where a lot of hobos hung out.
Yeah.
There was a lot of trash. It was filthy.
I think they even labeled it in one article as the hobo jungle.
Doesn't sound like a good place.
Doesn't sound like a place you'd want to hey kids, let's go out tonight. Let's go down to the flats. No.
And there was an area just east of Kingsbury Run, which was home to a lot of bars, brothels, flop houses, gambling dens. And this is a place that the Cleveland torso murderer took some of his victims from.
Yeah, I think he scoured that area, trying to find the right one to do those terrible things he did, or she did.
And the killer even taunted Eliot Ness at one point by placing the remains of 2 victims in full view of his office in City Hall. 2 days later, Ness and a group of 35 police officers raided Kingsbury Run. They gathered 63 men and they burned down the shantytown after this raid. Now, Ness was heavily criticized by the public for this action that he took. Number one, Gibbs, because they believed that this raid and the burning down of the shantytown wasn't going to do anything to stop the murders. But apparently it did, because after this happened, there were no more bodies found. So now we get into victims. And most researchers consider there to be 12 definite victims of the Cleveland torso murderer. Now, only 2 victims were positively identified. The rest were either John or Jane Doe's. And we're going to go through the victims in order of discovery, but in doing so, we're going to tell you the order in which they were murdered as well, and try to make it not too confusing. Edward Andrassy was 28 years old. He was found September 23rd, 1935 in the Jackass Hill area of Kingsbury Run. Seems like a strange name for an area.
It does, doesn't it?
Jackass Hill. Where do you live? I live over on Jackass Hill.
That's where all the jackasses are.
Seems strange.
Yeah.
He had been decapitated and castrated. But the reason that they were able to identify him is that they found his head. It was recovered. He had rope burns on both wrists. Now, Andrassy did have an arrest record. But the really strange thing about Edward Andrassy was that he was found nude, with the exception, Gibbs, that he still had his socks on. They believe he was murdered sometime around September 20th or 21st of 1935. And we mentioned that he was the first to be found, but he was actually the second victim of the Cleveland torso murderer. He was buried in St. Mary Cemetery in Cleveland. Now, we're talking about the Cleveland torso murderer here, but early on, in the beginning of his killing spree, this unidentified killer was actually known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run because that's where his early victims were from. Now, later on, he's going to be known as the Cleveland Torso Murderer as he expands into other areas. The second victim found was John Doe number 1. It was actually found the same day as Edward Andrassy and only about 30 feet away in the Jackass Hill area of Kingsbury Run. Now, obviously, this body was never identified, but it was castrated and decapitated, but the head was recovered. But still, they were never able to identify this victim. And it said that the skin was treated with some type of chemical that caused it to become reddish and leathery. Now, it's strange here, Gibbs. We're talking about two men found on the same day, very close together. But the thought is that John Doe number 1 was actually murdered earlier than Edward Andrassy.
Yeah.
That he was the first victim. And they estimate that he had been dead 7 to 10 days initially. But then they later revised it that it was probably more like 3 to 4 weeks. So by that logic, it seems to me as though he was murdered, dumped on Jackass Hill, and then the second victim was murdered later, but dumped in the same area. And then we talk about Florence Genevieve Palillo. Her body was found late January, early February of 1936 between East 20th Street and Orange Avenue in downtown Cleveland. Her body had been dismembered. Her head was never recovered. She was a waitress and known sex worker. But this case is a little bit different than what we've talked about so far because it's known that she was dismembered post-mortem. Rigor mortis had already set in by the time that the perpetrator dismembered her body. They believe that she was murdered at the end of January, and she was the third victim. So third victim, third to be found. She's buried in Pennsylvania. The next victim found was known as John Doe number 2, but also known as the Tattooed Man, found June 5th, 1936 in Kingsbury Run. This victim was decapitated while he was alive. That's gruesome.
Can't even imagine.
Now, they did recover the head. They put his time of death somewhere around June 3rd, so it's probably dead for about 2 days. And although the fourth to be found, he was actually the fifth victim. He was estimated to be between 20 and 23 years old, had a light complexion, reddish brown hair, chestnut colored eyes, 5'10", 5'11". He was tall, slender built, weighed around 165 pounds. But he was called the Tattooed Man because he had 6 unusual tattoos on his body. He had one tattoo that was of a bird with the names Helen and Paul on the inner side of his left forearm. Another tattoo was on the outer side of his right forearm that was a heart with an anchor in red and blue. On the inner side of his right forearm was a flag in the initials WCG. He had a butterfly on his left shoulder. A comic character named Jiggs was tattooed on his left leg at the ankle, and he had a Cupid tattoo on his right leg at the ankle. His undershorts had a laundry mark that indicated that the owner's initials were JD. And they actually made what they called a death mask of this victim, taking an impression of his face, and they took it almost like on tour, Gibbs. They took it around town. Thousands of people in Cleveland in the summer saw it at the Great Lakes Exposition. But despite that, the Tattooed Man was never identified. The next victim found was John Doe number 3, found July 22nd, 1936 in the Big Creek area of Brooklyn. This is west of Cleveland. The victim was dismembered and decapitated while still alive. They did recover his head, but he was never identified. And this unidentified male was the only known West Side victim.
Yeah, I mean, they thought he was probably around 40 years old, and they did find some clothing nearby that was all muddied and piled up, next to the head, which is really freaking me out. And the head and the clothes were about 10 feet away from his nude body. I just have this... I've never been somebody that, all these beheadings and things like that. I know that goes back centuries and centuries. That's what, in the old days of war, they did, right? They wanted the shock value. But I can't watch that stuff. That is so gruesome. And I can't imagine doing that to somebody while they're alive.
Well, I can't either, but where would you be watching it at? There's not a beheading channel that
No, there's videos out there. You can watch beheadings.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's videos of everything. You're right about that. It's not something I would want to watch.
Yeah, it's just so disturbing to me.
I actually do remember Gibbs seeing one time, and I think it was an American citizen that had been captured over in the Middle East.
Yeah.
By one of the terrorist organizations.
Right.
And I remember seeing him being beheaded.
Yeah.
And it made me sick.
There's no way I could watch that. It's just so disturbing.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
So you talked about this clothing that was piled up next to the head. There were blood stains on the coat, on a blue polo shirt. Not a single clue was found with the body other than the clothing that we talked about. The next victim found was John Doe number 4, found September 10th, 1936 in Kingsbury Run. And it happened when a transient tripped over the upper half of the man's torso as he was trying to hop a train. He tripped over the upper half of a man.
You imagine just running, trip. What the shit? What happened?
So they only found at the crime scene the upper half of the torso. Police searched a nearby pond, which I think is being generous, Gibbs. It was described as being more like maybe a big open sewer.
Just like a sewer pit, man.
Yeah.
Bet it smelled good. You imagine who had to put on the old wetsuit to go into that one?
I don't know. I don't think anybody was volunteering for that.
They point to the new guy. Hey,
yeah.
Hey, rookie, come here.
Or somebody drew the short straw.
Yeah, that's
on that one.
Just a straw you wish you didn't draw.
But they did find something, and it was the lower half of this man's torso and parts of both legs. So they sent in a diver to recover the body parts. But this is what gets me, Gibbs. The research talked about onlookers, right? Gawkers, people that had gathered at this scene to watch this spectacle play out. It was estimated that there were over 600 people seeing them pull these body parts out of this pond/open sewer. It's a lot of people. It's also thought that the killer could have been one of those 600 onlookers. So this victim was in his late 20s, but was never identified, and his head was never found. They estimated that he had been dead for about 2 days. Now, he was the 6th victim found, but determined to be the 7th victim in the series. And then we talk about Jane Doe number 1, found the next year, February 23rd, 1937, on Euclid Beach on the Lake Erie shore. And we talked in the very beginning, Gibbs, about the Lady of the Lake.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about her a little bit more in the episode.
Sure.
But Jane Doe number 1, this unidentified female, was found at the same spot as the Lady of the Lake was found.
Yeah, so clearly a familiar area for the killer.
Well, and I think, even though the Lady of the Lake was found years earlier, I think it's why a lot of people think that the lady of the lake could have been a Cleveland torso murderer victim.
Yeah, and she would have technically been the first victim if everybody would recognize it as that.
As for Jane Doe number 1, her head was never found. But unlike previous victims, the cause of death was not decapitation. Now, she was decapitated, but it was determined that it happened post-mortem after she was already dead. But on this February 23rd date, all they found was the upper half of this woman's torso. The lower half of her torso washed ashore 3 months later. This is some really grisly shit you've got me into.
Yeah, you imagine walking along the beach and all of a sudden...
You're walking with your dog, Rex West. You're throwing the...
Did you just call my dog Rex West?
No, it's my dog, Rex West.
Your dog Rex West?
Mm-hmm.
My dog's called K-Bar.
So I'm throwing the stick. Rex is going to get it.
Yeah.
We're walking along. We're having this great time. And part of a torso washes up on the shore.
Yeah. Freaky.
Jane Doe number 1 was determined to be in her mid-20s. They thought that she had died 3 to 4 days prior to the February 23rd date. She was the 7th victim found, but determined to be the 8th victim killed. And then we get to Jane Doe number 2. Found later that same year, June 6, 1937, a teenage boy discovered a human skull beneath the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. Next to the skull was a burlap bag containing the skeletal remains. So we know that she was decapitated, but it was also determined that the skeletal remains were missing a rib. Jane Doe number 2 was the only African American victim, and she was thought to have been dead at least a year when she was found in June of 1937. So they put her death in June of 1936, making her the 6th victim.
It's a long time in that burlap sack.
But unlike most of the other victims, police had a lead that developed on who she was. They thought that she was possibly a woman named Rose Wallace. Dental work was considered a close match by police. And her son was absolutely certain, Gibbs, that this was his mother. But it was 1937. So exact identification could not be achieved, mainly because the dentist who had done the work had died years before. That wouldn't be a problem today, right? They keep dental records in a much different way than I assume they did in the 1930s. So it's likely that it was Rose Wallace, but they couldn't be sure. And some people did have their doubts. You know, the body that was found was estimated to have been dead for about a year, and Rose Wallace had only been missing for 10 months. So it's not that big a difference. It's a couple of months, and I don't know how great they were at estimating time of death in the 1930s, especially when it spanned that far back, a year. Could they have been off a couple of months? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think they probably could have been. John Doe number 5 was found on July 6, 1937. And there were some problems going on in the flats that summer, particularly labor problems, to the point that the National Guard had to be called in to maintain order. And it was a young National Guardsman that was standing watch by the West 3rd Street Bridge that saw the first piece of this victim in the water. John Doe number 5 was pulled out of the Cuyahoga River near the Cleveland Flats. So they recovered the torso of this victim, but the abdomen had been gutted and the heart had been ripped out. And this man's head was never found. The victim was thought to have been in his mid to late 30s, and they estimated that he had died 2 to 3 days earlier. So again, Gibbs, I mean, we are talking about some very gruesome murders here. Gutting someone, ripping out someone's heart.
I mean, this is horrific. I mean, if you think about it, I mean,
It really is.
if this was going on today, if you were walking around Cleveland and you were hearing about this stuff, there'd be mass panic, man.
It'd be a hysteria in the streets. Of course, the news cycle is a little different today. It would be on every channel. The next victim found was Jane Doe number 3. This was the next year, April 8th, 1938. She was found in the Cuyahoga River as well. But at first, only her lower leg was recovered. And then later, on May the 2nd, her thigh was discovered floating in the river. Police searched under the bridge and found a burlap sack containing her headless torso cut into halves, as well as the other thigh and a left foot. I don't know who the hell is finding this stuff, but they got to be freaked out.
Yeah, they're thinking, man, I might have something good here. Let me open it up. When they open it up, they're like, what the?
That's the stuff of nightmares.
Yeah.
The head and the rest of the body was never found. Now, Jane Doe number 3 was determined to have drugs in her system, and she would be the only victim that would have drugs found in her system. So I think you have to look at that, Gibbs, and say, you know, that says something about the profile of this murderer. He's not picking people that are on drugs or known drug users. Many more victims would have had drugs in their system. This person just happened to have, is the way I look at it.
Yeah, kind of makes sense.
She was estimated to have died 3 to 5 days earlier. Now, 10th victim found, but actually the 12th victim murdered. So that makes her really the last recognized victim of the Cleveland torso murderer. Jane Doe number 4 was found on August 16th, 1938 at the East 9th Street Lakeshore dump. And it was 3 scrap collectors that were foraging in the dump site that found the torso of a woman, but it was wrapped in a man's double-breasted blue blazer. And then that was wrapped in an old quilt. The legs and arms were discovered in a recently constructed makeshift box wrapped in brown butcher paper and held together with rubber bands. The head was also discovered and was similarly wrapped in brown butcher paper. They estimated that Jane Doe number 4 had been dead between 4 to 6 months. But the very same day, Gibbs, John Doe number 6 is found at the very same dump site and essentially discovered at the same time as Jane Doe number 4.
Right.
As they were searching for more of her. Seems strange to say it that way, but that's what they were doing. As they were finding her body parts, they stumbled upon another victim. So this man had been decapitated, but they would find his head at the dump site in a can.
It's a can you don't want to play kick the can with. I'm
No.
sure it's a big can, but
Well, it'd have to be a big can.
Yeah.
Originally I was thinking like a coffee can or something, but that's not big enough.
no, it'd be
To hold a
like
human
a big
head.
gas can or something like that back in the day, you know.
But the victim was never identified. They estimated that John Doe number 6 had been dead for about 7 to 9 months. Many of the John and Jane Does were buried in a Potter's Field section of Highland Park Cemetery in Cuyahoga County. Jane Doe number 2 and the remains of what is believed to be Rose Wallace were donated to the Western Reserve University Medical School. But we have some other possible victims in this case. These are not recognized currently as definitive victims of the Cleveland torso murderer, but they're discussed a lot of times in connection with this murderer. We talked about the Lady of the Lake and how she could possibly be the very first victim of this serial killer. The headless body of an unidentified male was found in a boxcar in Newcastle, Pennsylvania on July 1st, 1936. And then you had 3 headless victims found in boxcars near McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania on May 3rd, 1940. All of these victims had similar injuries to the known victims of the Cleveland torso murder. So obviously, Gibbs, there's people that can make a connection there. It's not definitive.
No, but it's a lot of chopping off head.
There's a lot of decapitation.
Yeah, a lot of that going on right there for some reason.
So I think anytime you have a victim that is decapitated, has similar type injuries in, Pennsylvania, that's not that far, in a radius, in a certain time frame, you could make the case that, well, could it be this guy? And I'm assuming it's a guy. The way that these people are murdered, Gibbs, I just, not saying it couldn't be a woman.
No, but I understand what you're saying, because some people would say the strength involved to cut through the torso would require, someone that's really strong.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Not that
it couldn't happen, but I'm just saying that's the theory behind it, that it would have to be a man.
Yeah, it's not that there aren't some, or probably weren't some strong women out there, but these murders just seem like a man to me. And I guess that's why I'm saying that, the way that they were committed. There were some dismembered bodies found in the swamps near Newcastle, Pennsylvania, between the years of 1921 and 1934, and then again between 1939 and 1942. So again, Gibbs, you have decapitation, you have dismemberment. Could it be the same person? Yeah, it could be. Could be a totally different person too. Could be multiple people chopping off heads and dismembering bodies.
It's the thing they did back then.
In September 1940, an article in the Newcastle News referred to this killer as the murder swamp killer. But like we said, the similarities between the victims in Newcastle and those in Cleveland were, virtually identical. And you mentioned it earlier, Gibbs, the B&O Railroad line. Cleveland and Newcastle were connected by this railroad line. So you have people thinking, how hard is it to hop a train, go to Newcastle, keep killing?
Yeah.
Come back.
Come on back.
Kill some more. Move around. You even had, these similarities were enough to convince a Cleveland detective that the Newcastle murders were the work of the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run / Cleveland torso murderer. This guy was convinced that the connection was the railroad. And apparently, Gibbs, it ran twice a day between these two cities. And the detective went as far as going undercover, riding the rails, looking for clues of this killer's identity. So he must have thought pretty strongly about it. Or he just wanted to ride the rails twice a day.
Well, it's kind of fun.
I guess if you had a can of beans and I don't know what else you'd have.
Something to open the can of beans with.
What's that thing called where you have the stick with
the hobo thing?
Yeah, it's got a name for it. I can't think of it though.
Little stick with what's in the bandana at the end of the stick?
I don't know. Whatever
all your personal
beans,
belongings,
whatever.
Your
Yeah,
beans,
whatever you're taking with you.
Your knife.
I just can't think of what it's called. But if you're gonna do it, you got to have that. He's undercover. He's got to blend in.
He's got to look like the part.
Yeah. Got to. Now, on July 22nd, 1950, the body of 41-year-old Robert Robertson was found at a business at 2138 Davenport Avenue in Cleveland. And we talked about Robert right in the very beginning. Police believed he had been dead 6 to 8 weeks and appeared to have been intentionally decapitated. So he was decapitated. Police just thought it was intentional. Like it wasn't an accidental decapitation, which I'm sure can occur, but might be kind of rare. But they also thought that his death fit the profile of some of the other victims. He was homeless, he had an arrest record, and he had a drinking problem. So there was a lot of newspaper coverage linking this murder to the crimes that happened back in the 1930s. But that was a long span of time, Gibbs. At least 12 years probably between the last known Cleveland torso murder victim and this man, Robert Robertson, detectives investigating his death treated it as an isolated crime. All right, Gibbs, now let's get into some suspects. On August 24th, 1939, Sheriff Martin O'Donnell arrested a bricklayer named Frank Dolezal as a suspect in Florence Polillo's murder. Dolezal was a Cleveland resident. He was 52 years old. The sheriff had discovered that Dolezal had lived with Polillo for a time and that he was also acquainted with Edward Andrassy and Rose Wallace. Though police initially claimed that Dolezal had confessed, there was speculation that he had either been coached or coerced. Before he could go to trial, he hanged himself in his cell. When they did his autopsy, it revealed that he had sustained 6 broken ribs while in custody. And then later on, Gibbs, it came out that O'Donnell was the only one who even believed him to be guilty.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, that means just somebody's, he just had it hard to make this guy be the guilty one. So he pushed and pushed. And some people said maybe he drove him to commit his own suicide. Some people say, one article talked about maybe it was a setup, that he didn't hang himself, that
it was made to look like
he hung himself. Yeah.
Now, another suspected individual was Dr. Francis Sweeney. We mentioned him briefly in the beginning. Sweeney was a veteran of World War I. He was part of a medical unit that conducted amputations and patching in the field. Sweeney was personally interviewed by Eliot Ness, who, as we said, was overseeing the official investigation into the killings in his role as Cleveland safety director. During this interrogation, Sweeney is said to have failed to pass 2 polygraph tests. Now, this is in the 1930s, so these are very early polygraph machines. And you and I, Gibbs, have discussed the validity of polygraphs today. I don't know what the hell they were like in 1930s.
Yeah, I don't know how accurate they could have been back then, really think about it. Probably some big bulky thing. Probably the science behind it wasn't that true, Probably easy to manipulate how you felt about something, trick it up.
Well, again, I'm not sold on polygraphs today. So I definitely would not be sold on a 1930s polygraph. But both tests were administered by what was considered at the time to be a polygraph expert, a man by the name of Leonard Keeler. And Keeler told Eliot Ness that he had his man. This was the guy that did it. But apparently, Ness felt that there was very little chance of successfully prosecuting the doctor. For one thing, he happened to be the first cousin of one of Eliot Ness's political opponents, a congressman. And I guess this congressman had hounded Eliot Ness publicly about his failure to catch the killer. So that probably wouldn't look very good if you are claiming that the Cleveland torso murderer is the cousin of one of your chief rivals who's been, on your ass about not catching this guy. But Francis Sweeney committed himself to a mental facility, and police couldn't find any leads or any connections to him as a possible suspect. But something interesting happened during his hospital confinement. Threatening postcards with his name on them were sent to Eliot Ness and his family all the way up into the 1950s. And these postcards were mocking and harassing in nature. Sweeney died in a VA hospital in Dayton in 1964, right here in our hometown. But we know how old this case is, Gibbs, and all the official police records related to this case have either been lost, destroyed, or removed. So we often talk about, on these unsolved cases, the likelihood that somebody would be caught or identified. I think the likelihood in this one is very, very low. I mean, we're talking 80 years has gone by and then some.
Yeah, be very difficult. I mean, it's like when we talked about Hoffa, we said how hard it'd be difficult for that to even get resolved.
And that was 30 years newer than this case.
Yeah, so this one would be almost impossible. I'd hate to say impossible completely.
Yeah, nothing's impossible, but on the scale, you would have to put the likelihood of solving this one very low.
A 2.
Because a 2 on the scale.
Yeah.
Because even if you did think you had the person or know who it was, almost guaranteed, right, that person's no longer alive. There's no way.
Well, you could solve it if you could confirm for sure, but you could never bring them to justice.
But how would you ever solve it or prove it? You're not going to have DNA.
Well, you're never going to be able to prove it because you're not going to be able to have you can't have a trial if the person's not around.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, you can just have the assumption.
But it is a fascinating case because of the brutality of the murders.
Oh, man, it's
some of the most brutal, gruesome murders that, we've ever profiled.
Yeah. Chopping people up, man. Really? Cutting through them?
For what reason? What's the link between the victims? Because there really doesn't seem to be a whole lot other than, we talked about most of them were considered to be lower class. There was some of them were transient, maybe homeless.
So
but
maybe it was a surgeon just wanted to practice. This is how he did it.
I don't know. I don't think you could rule anything out.
Mm-mm.
But that's it. That is it for the case of the Cleveland torso murderer, also known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run.
Yeah, we did it.
Also maybe known as the Murder Swamp Killer. We don't know.
No, we don't. But most likely all the same.
Could be. You never know.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to go through those?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Travis from Kansas City calling you guys again. I gotta say, I just been catching up on the unsolved right now, and I just listened to the Yuba County case, and oddly enough, after all the disturbing cases and the things that should keep me up at night, this one really stuck with me, just because there really isn't any resolution to it, and honestly, none of the theories out there really seem to stick. I think it's kind of that unknown factor that really kind of has me shaking, because nobody really knows what happened to these 5 guys, or really can theorize about it. Anyway, keep up with what you guys have been doing. You guys do such an awesome job. I've spent 99% of my time on the road driving around, and you guys are doing an awesome job keeping me alert and going and doing what I'm doing. As always, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All right. Great voicemail from Travis. We always like when he calls in.
Yeah. The Uba.
Yuba.
Or Uba.
You go Uba, I go Yuba.
Yeah, and then we'll get an Uber.
And then we'll get an Uber and go get something to eat.
Yeah.
But, that was an intriguing case.
It really was.
Because of the very strange details that are known to have happened. And then, like Travis said, it's just a whodunit.
Yeah, what really happened that night?
How did it happen?
Yeah.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. My name's Pete, and I want to thank you guys for all the hard work you put into the TCAT Unsolved, and Criminology podcasts. People like me and us who are into true crime, it's like a mecca with as many episodes you guys have put out. I come from Rhode Island, and even though I've beaten the case to death myself, I think it'd be really cool if you guys could do an episode on the United States' youngest serial killer and Rhode Island's most notorious serial killer, Craig Price, the Warwick slasher. He's not very well known nationwide, but everybody in Rhode Island knows who he is. Again, thank you for all the hard work, and can't wait to hear what episode you guys got lined up for us. Thank you. Have a good one.
I love that suggestion.
What, that we're the mecca of true crime?
No, that we should look into Craig Price.
Oh, yeah. Of course, everybody in Rhode Island knows who he is, because Rhode Island, do you see it on the map? It's like a dot.
Didn't we already say you and I and about 50 guys could take over Rhode Island?
Yeah, I think we did. Storm it in and grab it up.
But I really do like that suggestion. I think we should dive into that one and bump it up the list.
Dive in, man.
This is Luke from Germantown, Wisconsin. Just wanted to call and let you guys know I love the podcast and look forward to it each and every week. I usually listen to you guys at work, and it makes the day go by much, much easier. I have two cases I'd like to hear you guys cover. First is the Brown's Chicken Massacre in Palatine, Illinois. The case went unsolved for many, many years, and finally someone spoke up and the case was solved. That gives me hope for the next suggestion for the Unsolved podcast, the Tinley Park, Illinois Lane Bryant shooting. It really baffles me the amount of evidence the police have and the unique description of the suspect, and they still have not been able to solve it. Again, thank you guys for the awesome podcast. Keep your own time ticking. Later.
All right. Two
Good suggestions.
Two really good suggestions, and I'm familiar with both of those, and I think they would make for good episodes.
There you go. Put it on the list, man.
Hey, Mike, and hey, Rex West. This is Lily Fell from Springfield, Illinois. I was hoping that you would do an episode on Donald Henry Gaskins, nicknamed Pee-wee. His story, to me, is a very interesting one, and Fergie, you do such a wonderful and thorough research. I think you guys would make a great episode out of it. Also, Ferg, I wanted to let you know that I was listening to episode 1 of Criminology, and it gave me a panic attack at work. So thank you for that. Also, the best voicemail I've heard so far was that of Tim from Long Beach, California. So I just wanted to say hey to him. Have a great day, you guys, and keep your own time ticking.
So we got to break this one down.
So first, am I supposed, when we do that episode, am I doing it as Rex West?
I just assume you're doing all the episodes as Rex West because you sound the same all the time.
You sure?
Yeah.
You say that about my accents, too.
Exactly.
I think you're confused.
I think you just have kind of one voice.
Rex West is this, and then I'm like this.
Sounds very similar.
And you got Mikey G, you know what I'm saying?
Now, that one's different.
So
Pee-wee Gaskins is one of those that we're going to have to do because I get a lot of requests for that one, for sure. And it was cool that she called you Rex West. I like that. Got a kick out of it.
Rex West. Got my boots on.
Hey guys, this is Christina Napoli calling from Brooklyn, New York. I love you guys. You crack me up. I listen to you all day at work. Fucking funny. I just wanted to say hi and keep doing what you're doing because you're keeping me very entertained. Keep your own time ticking.
What up, Brooklyn?
I like a good New York accent.
Got me some Brooklyn.
You got you some Brooklyn?
Brooklyn in the house.
You're about as far away from Brooklyn as you can possibly be.
I'm really far away, aren't I?
But I do like a good New York accent. I like a good Boston accent, too.
New York accent.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Nanners calling from Charlton, Massachusetts. I love your podcast. I have been listening since the fall, and you guys carry me through my long commutes into work every day. So just wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to give you 2 suggestions for some possible episodes. One is Dr. Richard Sharp. He was a dermatologist that shot his wife, but the interesting twist is that he was a cross-dresser. And so it happened here in Massachusetts. So, yeah, it got interesting when he was in prison as well. So I thought that would be a good one. Another one is Daniel LaPlante. He killed a mother and her 2 children in Townsend, Massachusetts in 1987. And that was another interesting case. My mom actually worked with his mother, and prior to the murders, he actually had some behaviors and some criminal activity prior to that was a little disturbing. So those are just some ideas. Keep up the great work, and I am a Team Gibby fan, and keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
No better way to be.
There is no other way to be.
Yeah. Team Gibby or Team Rex.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
So a couple of good suggestions.
Really were.
Shocking that a man that would kill a mother and 2 children would display some aberrant behavior.
Good choice of words.
Did I use that correctly?
In my vocabulary, yes.
Yeah. You wouldn't know anyway. I could say anything to you. You have no idea. The listeners will know.
Wow. Wow.
All right, Gibbs, let's wrap it up. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate it. that is another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.